righteous behavior that are very hard to articulate for them sometimes. And these mental processes have been informed by biblical principles over the years. And to the degree that they haven't, to that degree is this virtue probably not spiritual. David, I forgot to end the question. Let me make a suggestion about reading Edwards' sermons. In the 2-volume work, in the second volume, there is a section called 5 Discourses or something. Edwards says these sermons were the sermons that God used to bring about the Great Awakening. I'd go to those sermons, those 5, and start there. But there are a lot of sermons in the second volume, dozens of them. Just any sermon. I've never read a sermon of Edwards that didn't help me. You got to understand, this man's hard to read now. It's not a Swindoll. I mean, that's no criticism of Swindoll. If we wrote like Edwards today, nobody would read our books, period. Oh. Which writings of Edwards are most useful and which are not so useful? The most useful one in the whole issue of predestination is the freedom of the will. The most useful one in laying bare my heart and changing me was the religious affections. The most useful one for giving me a vision of redemptive history and what God's up to in the world is the dissertation concerning the end for which God created the world. I've never read anything better on original sin than the book on original sin. Not useful. Well, I would send you to The Nature of True Virtue last, probably. But it's good. I don't know. Carrie, you had... The question is, when there are other people putting pressures on our lives to conform to their vision of what the pastoral role should be that doesn't conform to ours, how do we communicate to them the rigor that we want to pursue? And I suppose just what is that balance and that rigor? I think you communicate it in the way you preach on Sunday morning. You earn your right to set your pace as a pastor. When you come to a church, there are 100 expectations that are different. And I think there will be a season in which you will yield to many of those in the beginning. I did things in the beginning that I don't do now because I didn't want to offend. I didn't want to ask for total change. And I don't think you can ask people to trust you without a good bit of effort. And so I think there's a flow in the pastoral development in which you yield to what you need to in order to win their affection and their trust, all the while giving them the very best they could possibly get on Sunday morning so that they walk out saying, thank you, and we appreciate it, and we're growing. And as that increases, you can begin to call the shots in your schedule with more authority and more integrity. Because if I told my people like I did last Sunday night, don't ask me to come to your parties on Saturday, I didn't get any sneers. Nobody came up to me afterwards and said, you're such a withdrawn pastor. Why don't you get out and hobnob? Now, there might be some thinking that, I don't know. But by and large, I think the fruit of the labor has earned my right to say that to their face. Call me on Friday, I said. I'll go to any house on Friday night. Now, that's the second part of the answer. Find ways to do double duty in your duties. Funerals at Bethlehem are an incredible opportunity of fulfilling these sorts of things. If you just say, here's a time of ripe emotional openness. You talk, you may have a group this size or half this size, and then you have this little dinner afterwards, and you're there, and they see you talking. And I think we should try to go to as many things as we can that cover a lot of people. There will always be people in the church, individuals, who can't get enough of you. They will just sap you for all you're worth. They make appointment after appointment after appointment because they are clinging vines and they live off of your authority. They have a vicarious enjoyment of your position and so on. And I think you can guard yourself from those in certain ways with your schedule and setting up. If you don't have a secretary, you got one of those little crazy machines they use on the phone now. I don't know if that's helpful, but that's the best I can do. The beginning of the ministry, yield, and as the ministry goes on, earn the trust. But try to know your people and be among them as much as you can with the demands that you have. Now, I don't know who. Go ahead. Ken. What's a plan for working in the Scriptures daily so that you can see that you grow thereby? I think taking a book that you are fairly unfamiliar with or haven't worked through and begin to work through it from beginning to end. I'd love to talk about computers. If Edwards had a computer, a word processor, good night what we would have had. But with hard disks and computers these days, what you can do in terms of Bible study and note-taking is just phenomenal. But I haven't had one up until the last 4 years and still made it my effort to take a book, Ken. I'm working on 2 Corinthians right now. One of these years I'll preach on it. But I don't know the argument of 2 Corinthians half as well as I know Romans. A third as well as I know Romans. So I'm just starting, and I copy the text down. I arc. I'm just going to talk about arcing here. There's a bunch of us who know what this arcing is, but I write the text down, proposition by proposition. And as I go, I think of questions. I'll make a little circle in red over one of the words and turn to another page and put that one and get out commentaries and read or think or get out my concordance. The concordance, Moulton and Gieden, Greek concordance, most important book after the Bible in my library. And Englishman's Hebrew concordance, second. I do more work in those than commentaries and getting ready for sermons and studying. So you take your book and then you start writing. And what comes to your mind when you write is just phenomenal. I mean, you grow so much. Things come to your mind and you write them down. And then you keep writing this text. And then you try to put the propositions together at the top of the page in this little device we have. But you don't need to know this device in order to just write. Writing out the text is probably the most practical thing I can say. So that you take a page like this, and you take the first 6 verses of 2 Corinthians, and you write each proposition on a separate line. And as you write, you ask questions. Why this word? Why that word? Why that? And if you know Greek, which I hope most of you do, you do it out of the Greek. You make your own translation. And you take another page and you make notes about what you've written here. And you coordinate it with colors and with numbers and things. And you draw lines all over the page, connecting words up here to down here and so on. So I would work through books. That would be my procedure. The question was, what's in a nutshell Edwards' criticism of the Great Awakening and what's his view of saving faith? Well, my time is up. So I'll send you to a couple of books and make a comment. The Religious Affections is his mature criticism of the Great Awakening, positive and negative. His question was, how do you recognize a true work of grace in the heart? And his main criticism of the Great Awakening was that there was a false work of grace, a false enthusiasm that was being depended on that didn't have any real evangelical humiliation in it, any real sight of God, any real reliance upon the Savior, and any real spiritual obedience. It was form and emotional. That would be his main criticism, and he unfolds it with incredible precision and frightening insight into our hearts in the Religious Affections. With regard to saving faith, in the second volume, he has a long essay called On Faith. And I suppose it's as much that as anything that made me want to have the topic here to be faith. Faith, to be saving, must be, I don't know whether he'd say rooted in exactly, or having as part of its essence a spiritual sense of divine things. A spiritual feeling in the heart that is not parallel to chill bumps and sweaty palms or a fast beating heart.